everyone. Welcome to Ending the Stigma. Thank y'all so much for being here. Who do we have in the audience already? We have Jeff Wallner is somewhere right there. Nope, that's Shannon. Jeff Wallner. There's Jeff. That's Jeff. All these LinkedIn users. Kenny D is here. Andrew Bennett is here, joining us from a few hours in the future. It's like 1 a.m. where he's at. Samantha Sierra, my sister from another mister. How are you doing, ma'am? Kelly Steinica, Randy House. Tanya is here too. There's her comment. Daniel Hall, man, we got all kinds of people showing up. Thank y'all so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. My guest tonight is doing some really cool things. Hey, Chris Smith. Dude, I'm still getting comments about how good the show was with you last week. Was it last week? It was last week. Man, time's running together. Chastity Alexander, I see you. Thanks for coming. Tiffany Minot is here. She was a guest a few weeks ago. Everybody's showing up. I love it. So anyway, my guest tonight, Pedro Rodriguez, is doing some really cool things. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Shannon Nelson recommended I connect with this woman, and I don't remember her name. Pedro can tell me whenever he comes out. She doesn't really do podcast appearances or live appearances or interviews or anything like that, but she put me in touch with Pedro, and Pedro is doing cool stuff, man. Like as far as trying to get to the kids before they just totally wreck their lives as an adult. So I'm not going to say any more about it. I'm going to bring Pedro out here and let him tell us all about what he's doing at the Urban Youth Justice. Hey, Pedro.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for that cool intro.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think it was Shannon. I'll have to go back and look at my DMs and figure out who it was. It doesn't happen very often that I jump down a chain of people to get to a guest, but it worked out really good. I'm glad it did. Yeah, Holly, I am looking quite tan. I spent the weekend at the coast and I am burnt. Where is it? There it is. Yes. Yeah, and I'm burnt. And when I burn, my nose breaks out. That's what all the little red dots on the end of my nose are. So anyway, yeah, thank you for noticing that, Holly. I appreciate it. Yeah, Pedro. So tell us a little bit about your story. Tell us about the Urban Youth Justice and what you're doing over there with the kids, man. I love it. Like I absolutely love trying to get to them before or to break the cycle. They obviously, whenever you get to them, they've already been in some level of trouble, but trying to get to them before they continue that into their adult life.
All right. So my name is Pedro. I'm the founder and director of Urban Youth Justice. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, a faith-based ministry. I launched it about 4 years ago, 2019, right before COVID hit. But prior to that, I was volunteering and doing a lot of work with other organizations with at-risk youth. And I also did some adult prison ministry, which led me to launch Urban Youth Justice after meeting a lifer at the DeSoto Correctional Facility and finding out that he was doing life in prison. And he told me his story, and he kind of told me, man, you should be trying to reach these kids out there before they wreck their lives and get sentenced as adults.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was meeting a lot of kids who were already sent, direct filed and were with serious charges, getting charged as adults. I met one specific kid who I still talk to today, who got sentenced to 10 years in prison after just one charge. He had a 3.5 GPA, star quarterback, never been in trouble with the law, but made one very bad decision, and it cost him 10 years of his life. And so that's just one of many stories I've bumped into mentoring kids. And so a lot of this is birthed from my own personal pain, growing up fatherless. My mom was addicted to substances in my early youth, and I ended up making a lot of poor decisions, ended up in juvenile detention and county jail as a young adult, parole, probation, and ankle monitor, all of that stuff. And I learned the hard way up until my early 20s when I made a decision to surrender my life to God and and then allow God to shape me and become a leader in my community. And I moved to Florida 12 years later. 2014, I moved to Florida, and I've been here almost a decade now, just doing what God's called me to do.
I love it, man. I love it. So tell us a little bit more, dig a little deeper into like what you're doing, like how you go in, the message that you bring, the kind of the impact you're making, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, so I use three tools that we use. We're a faith-based ministry, so we use the gospel. You know,
Man.
we also use music. We know that this younger generation, most of them, if not all of the ones I come in contact with, like to listen to hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up listening to that, so we use Christian hip hop. I have a lot of people on my team who are Christian hip hop artists, and so we bring music inside, do live music. It connects with them, and we also have people on our team sharing their real life stories. A lot of the people on my team are ex felons who served 10, 15, 20 years, some of them in federal time, and are now transformed individuals who have accomplished much since coming home and changed their lives, and they got
Mm-hmm.
that to show it. Some of them are business owners, entrepreneurs, and have gone on to get college degrees, including myself. I ended up, I was a high school dropout, ended up getting my GED late in life, and went and got my bachelor's degree and master's degree just like maybe 10 years ago.
Right on.
I'm now a counselor, so I went from hating school to realizing education was a big ticket out of
Mm-hmm.
poverty and the situations I got myself into, and finding better jobs. Because after being incarcerated or having a criminal background, I tell these kids, it's hard to get a job. It's hard to get reestablished or
Yeah.
gain trust in society when you lose trust there. So it took me years to build myself back up. After making poor choices.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy how one moment can change your life like that. One bad choice, or it's not really ever just one, but it's one bad choice that leads to another bad choice that leads to another bad choice. Before you know it, you snowballed into this whole, crap show of of a life now. And it you didn't get there overnight. You're not going to come out of it overnight
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Um, what kind of response do you get from the kids when you go in? Like I've heard, different people talking, especially guys that I was locked up with that had been to juvie, how they can get pretty rough in there and how it's not, they say you think prison is bad, go to juvie. Like those dudes do not give a flip. Like what kind of response do you get?
Well, I'm proud to say that our reception has been phenomenal. I've traveled the whole state of Florida and beyond. I've gone to California, Chicago, Tennessee multiple times, Texas, Alabama. Several states outside of Florida that have invited us, and I can tell you, I can count on less than one hand the negative situations we've ever experienced.
That is awesome.
Most of them have been positive, and what it is, and this is a quote that I always hold on to, is that they don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And so when we go in there, we always show these kids love. A lot of times we dress like them. We come in look, with Jordans and dress with urban gear. We don't come with suit and tie. you know
Mm-hmm.
and when we start to share our stories, that's when they let their guards down. They be like, wow, these guys actually been through something. They understand where I'm at. And so a lot of them begin to let their guard down. And then by the end of our presentation, we have a line of kids that just want to talk to us, whether
Mm-hmm.
privately or just ask us questions, or they want
Mm-hmm.
us to pray for them, or just connect with us when they come home, because we always want to connect with them and offer them more than just what we do in the hour or two that we're there. We want to make sure they know they got somebody to, when they come home, because most of these kids come home to hostile environments, bad homes, no father. Some of them don't even have a mother than the foster care system, or they
Mm-hmm.
aged out of the foster care system. And
Mm-hmm.
so we try to make sure that they're well equipped whether it's that they need a pair of sneakers or whether it is they need some transportation to get somewhere, some clothing, a job. Jobs is a must.
Mhm.
Most kids that find a job upon release are less likely to reoffend. So that's one thing we try to work hard on, is finding jobs and helping them get connected with some type of education, whether it's to finish their GED or get a trade or something like that.
I love it, man. I love the aftercare aspect of it too, because it's so much more. Um, Prison ministry is great. Like I did it for a while. I'm kind of not doing it right now, just for a number of reasons. But um, they need all the help they can get when they get out, because it's great to go in there and plant that seed. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm going to change my life. But then they go out and they go back to the same places, or they don't have a job or a place to go, or like you said, or even a pair of sneakers to put on. So having somebody on the outside showing them that love again uh, has got to be a game changer for them. Like, to me, that's what's going to make the bigger difference. You're putting your money where your mouth is. You're showing them, okay, like I told you this. Now let's go do it, and I'm here
Mhm.
to help.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's cool, man. So where did you say you were originally from?
I'm originally from Jersey City, New Jersey.
Jersey. I love it.
Yeah, the north side of the state, where
North side.
the hood. Yeah.
Almost to New York. Yeah, exactly, Chris. It's the what's next. I need not I need. I was reading a comment. I've got a friend that, and I use this example a lot. I've got a friend that he has a PhD. He's an adjunct college professor. He goes back into the prison and teaches college. He's the reentry coordinator at that college, because that college goes into multiple prisons in the Huntsville, Texas area. Um, Been out for a long time, and he still sometimes has had trouble recently, like even finding housing. What what kind of challenges do you run into with a kid that, like you said, maybe is aged out of the foster system or been in and out of juvie, doesn't have a good home life? What kind of challenges do you face getting them housing? Like finding, like, because it's hard to find a house. It's hard to rent somewhere anywhere without credit.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
tell us about that.
Well, I can say that is one of the greatest challenges we face. There isn't a lot of housing. There's a couple of group homes and stuff, foster care types, situations. But a kid that's aging out, that just wants to go on his own, they're pretty much on their own. A lot of times they need a lot of support, and so we try to get them connected with local church and some community resources that may be able to help that youth beyond what we may be able to do. We try to help them do some of the initial footwork, but there
Mm-hmm.
really isn't. Most shelters are like for women, women with
Mm-hmm.
children. You know, it's not there's not a lot for the young teenagers, 18, 19, and most of them are just getting on their feet. Even if they get a job, we all know that rents right now are super high, and these kids can't even afford that. So it is a bad situation. We've had some people on my team take some youth in and help them for a season. I've
Mm-hmm.
even helped some kids for a season and let them stay with me. If it's possible, but it's not always possible. So that's where I feel like, man, like what else can I do type situation. Like you feel helpless or something, and you try to reach out to other people, and you do the best you can, but there's not really a lot of solution for that. We
Yeah.
know that usually requires a lot of funding and permit, different types of permits and stuff to do that with the state. So that is one of the greatest challenges we have.
Yeah, I bet. Um, what about like finding them a job? Like, do you have partnerships with uh, any organizations or companies or anything like that uh, to help these guys?
Yeah, there's a couple of guys on my team who have high positions in their company, and they've been able to get some youth jobs somewhere in Ocala, Kissimmee, a couple of different places. The thing is, since we're spread throughout the state, and juvenile detentions, the juvenile residential programs are no different from prisons in how they locate the youth. So most kids, they'll be doing their time hours away from where they live.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always like how do we get them plugged in? So we try to have, that's why our team spreads throughout the state. We want to be able to have a network where we can call somebody in Jacksonville or Miami and say, hey, we got a youth coming home in your area. Is there someone that we can connect them with to continue mentoring them, help them get a job? And sometimes we're successful in making that connection, and sometimes we're not, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I bet. Shannon had a question. What's the best advice you can provide to a minor that has both parents incarcerated?
Oh man, I actually have had that situation. I know some kids, their both parents are incarcerated. Um, you know, we try to be that father figure. We try to show them love and help them in any way, offer them coaching, counseling, the services that we offer them, whether it's in person or on Zoom, to help them deal with some of these difficult things. We do teach life skills at times, and not everything we do is faith based. I used to
Mm-hmm.
actually go into some facilities and just teach a curriculum on life skills and preparing these kids so when they come back home, they know how to
That's
survive on their own.
Yeah, man, that's so important.
Yeah, and I've had kids who have gone home and said they can't go back home because of these kind of situations.
Yeah,
Or sometimes I've had kids tell me I don't want to go back home because my mom and dad are involved in drugs and involved in things that if I go back around them, I'm going to violate probation. So we have to prepare these kids. And some of them have been successful at finding a job, getting an apartment, and even purchasing a vehicle on their own.
nice. Yeah.
So it's just about it's really about the youth staying connected to whoever it is that's committing. When I
Mm-hmm.
commit to a youth, I commit to that youth all the way,
Mm-hmm.
till I see them accomplishing goals. We sit down, what goals do you have? What are some needs? And we'll work through those goals until I see them. But sometimes the kids don't follow through. Sometimes the kids also, because of their financial situation, are operating on cell phones with only Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
you
Right.
know, so we lose
Right.
contact with them, and it's hard to follow up.
Yeah.
But my best advice, to a child whose both parents are incarcerated is that find a way to stay connected to their parents, write to them if they can. I know they do allow them to write and stuff. Maybe they're able to write to the parents so that they don't lose that connection for several years, and
Mm-hmm.
just aim to make your parents proud. And also we talk a lot about forgiveness, because I know some kids may not want nothing to do with their parents because of the hurt they've experienced, or their parents have in some way neglected them. We talk a lot about that.
Yeah. That forgiveness is key. You don't realize how much it affects your life, every aspect of your life, until you've forgiven. And then you look back and you're like, oh my God. Like it made all the difference in the world because you carry it like a weight. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm going to shout this person out. I don't know her. So it might be somebody that you know, Rita P.
Yeah, that's Rita Pearson. She's the one that connected me to you. That's
Okay. That's right.
she's the,
Yes.
she's
Yes.
the
Yes.
she's the,
Yes.
she's the president and founder of Hope for the Hood. She's one of my partners. We are currently doing Stop the Gun Violence tour throughout the state of Florida, and we reached Tennessee as well. So it's been a great experience just bringing in this message of putting guns down, and we give them pledge cards, and we show some visual, some short skits, like homicide skits, real scenes that happen in people's lives with guns and murders. And then one of the members from my team shares his story, and also does some Christian hip hop for them and stuff relevant to what we're
Awesome.
doing. Yeah, so it's been a good presentation.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome, man. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? Y'all put them in the chat. Any questions for Pedro? So tell me, Pedro. I know you shared a little bit, kind of touched on it a little bit. Is there any deeper you want to go into your story and how you ended up having a heart for people that were locked up?
Yes. So I see that fatherlessness is a major problem in society. We all know that.
Bingo.
There's no mystery. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, fatherlessness had a great, negative impact on my life. From young, I was spoken negative things, into my life, saying I wouldn't amount to much. I'm Puerto Rican. I grew up in Jersey City, which was a rough city at the time. and without a father, and my mom was a teenage mom trying to make the best of it, working. And I tried drugs, I tried alcohol, I tried all kinds of things to fill the void and numb the pain. Began to run the streets with the wrong people, and like I said, I ended up in juvenile facilities, residential program they sent me to. I was also in county jail by the time I was 18, 19. I still hadn't changed. I also became a teen father, which definitely changed my perspective on life. So I
Mhm.
complicated my life more than what it was already.
Mhm.
And seeing a lot of my friends that I grew up with on the streets went up the road to do prison time, fed time. I knew it was only a matter of time that I was going to end up in prison or dead, because a lot of my friends that I grew up with did die young, messing with guns, messing with drugs. And so by my early 20s, by the grace of God, if it wasn't for the Lord pulling me out of that lifestyle, I would have probably not been on this interview right now.
Yeah.
So, and I also had uncles and some relatives also that went up, to prison for several years. And I saw the impact that it had on the family, the pain it caused, and, how it just ruined messed up the dynamic that we had of always gathering, and this person's missing and they're away, and we have to travel to go visit them in prison. And it
Mhm.
was it was rough. It was rough for us. So it really drew my heart to wanting to do prison ministry. And then, because of my love for the youth as well, I worked with kids in the youth on the foster care system in New Jersey before I moved to Florida. I guess having the love for both of them and realizing, man, I'm talking to lifers in prison that are telling me, like, hey, we appreciate you coming here, but I think you need to go and reach these youth before they get here. So
Come on.
that's kind of when I said, all right, you know what, you're right. And I started to reach out to organizations like Youth for Christ and Sozo
Yep.
Missions and stuff, that they were doing some local ministry where I lived. And they were grateful, they were glad to bring me on board, and I volunteered. They also brought me on staff, and I did that for several years till I eventually launched Urban Youth Justice in 2019.
That's awesome, man. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it.
And it's crazy, Chris, that when I launched it, I thought it was just going to be like a local thing, just a small little ministry. I wasn't thinking big. I was just wanting to mentor some kids and share the good news with them. And
Mhm.
God blew open the door. And Mama Rita, I call her Rita Pearson. She was one of the instrumental pieces to the puzzle that connected me with a lot of the organizations that I was able to go and now spread my wings out wide to other parts of the state. And next thing you know, I found myself traveling, and I'm like, whoa, this is bigger than I thought. Then we got hit with COVID, and that put a stall, it stalled us a little bit. But we were actually able to use Zoom. Can you believe that we were actually able to use Zoom at one facility in St. Pete? And we were actually able to minister to the kids and speak to them through Zoom on one of the staff's laptops. And we did that for several months until they were starting
Awesome.
to let us back in.
Mhm. That's pretty cool that they let y'all do that,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
what's up. Heck yeah. So there was some questions that came in. Uh, this is from Jeff Wallner. He said, "What's the best turnaround story you saw with a kid you worked with?"
Okay. So the best turnaround story that I always, think about, um, I have several, but there's one kid that I mentored that was direct filed in Sarasota County Jail. When I moved to Florida, I wasn't aware of how the system worked here yet. I didn't know that they had juveniles, incarcerated in an adult jail. And so I met this kid when I was mentoring on Monday nights, when I was just getting started out here, just trying to get my foot through the door. And this one kid was looking at doing a 10-year sentence, which is the same kid I referenced earlier. But he never been in trouble. He was fatherless, mom on drugs, similar situation like myself. We connected on a lot of commonalities that we had and things that in common. And then, but he ends up reading the Bible during the time that I was mentoring him. He turned his life to the Lord, and he had already consequences to deal with. He got sentenced to 10 years, but I've been in communication with him through the prison email for the last 6-7 years. He's already 7 years in or 8 years in. He'll be coming home in a couple years. And I met him a while back when I first got here, and so he now is like, Pedro, when I come home, I want to join your ministry. I want to travel with you
Mm,
and tell these kids not to make the same mistake I made. One bad mistake cost me 10 years of my life and maybe more, because when he comes home, he's got to start over, and try to
hmm
rebuild his life, but he's got an amazing, his attitude, his heart, humble kid. He's, even while he's in prison, he hasn't forgotten about God. He's still reading and just, working. I think they got him like on a work release kind of program now, and he'll
hmm
be coming out to a halfway house eventually and be free.
Nice.
So yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Chris Smith had a question. Are there any young adult peers on your team?
Young adult peers. Yes, yes. Yeah, we have several young people on our team. Our team stretches from early 20s up into like late 40s, 50. I think is probably the oldest on my team. We have women, and we do girl and boy facilities, so we have women and men handling
hmm
those things. But yeah, we do have a few young guys on my team who did serve 7 or 8 years in prison. We have one guy on our team that just came home from doing 13 years. A gun went off by mistake inside of a car, and he killed his best friend by
Mm,
mistake. And he tells his story.
mm,
But yeah, there's another guy on my team that just joined us. He did 11 years in the federal prison. Another ex Miami gangbanger did about 8 years in prison. There's several on our team that have done prison time and
yeah.
are now telling their story. And these guys are not just volunteering with us and speaking to the youth, but some of them do go into adult prisons as well, or
Yeah.
they're doing great things in their community or in their local churches.
hmm Very cool. It makes a big difference whenever it's somebody that has lived that life versus somebody that hasn't,
Yes.
because the kids know that you get it
Yeah.
because you've been there. Not saying that people that never have lived life don't make an impact, because they do. There's plenty of people that do prison ministry that have never,
Hmm.
done never done drugs, never done time. None. Hey, Linka, I haven't seen you in forever. Sorry. But having those people that have done time, to me, always made a bigger impact because they knew what I was going through.
Yeah. Yeah.
They went through it too. So,
Right.
Tiffany said, "What areas do you serve again?" I know you said it, but just want to make sure she heard them all.
Well, I live in the central region of Florida. I'm up in Tampa area, but we serve several in this area, but we stretch all the way to. We have one facility that my son and a few other guys are leading in Pembroke Pines, Broward County, and we have one all the way in the Panhandle by Pensacola, Crestview Youth Academy. A friend of mine, Greg, is running that over there. We have Kissimmee, Ocala, several in Tampa and Waimama. Yeah, we're pretty spread out throughout the whole state. Um, we don't do a lot of facilities in the north, but we do partner with Hope for the Hood, Mama Rita again, who she's closest to those facilities because
hmm
she's in Georgia, so she'll cross over into the state, and we do Jacksonville and some of these Paisley and some of these other facilities that are further in the north.
Yeah, all in Florida though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Not all of them do we have ongoing services. Some of them we just pop up and visit from time to time and then
hmm
connect, but we do have about 9 of them that we have teams that are going in regularly, weekly and bi-weekly. Those are the
Nice.
ones that we're really making a more of a major impact because
hmm
we're able to feed these kids. We're able to, like, at Christmas time, give them gifts. We do other things too. We think about them as much as we can, and bless them as we receive donations into our organization.
hmm
The girls get go home bags that have, like, hygiene and a bunch of stuff in it, for the girls to take home. We do different things for them.
Awesome, man. Kelly said, "What was your aha moment to your faith becoming your passion?"
Ooh, what was my aha moment? Well,
Mm,
I was hurting. I was broken. And I sat with a pastor. I sat with a man for the first time after about 10 years after my father passed away. And this man looked me dead in the eyes and told me, son, you're broken and you need healing. Right. This is before coming to Christ. And right there, like a part of me was like, what do you mean I'm broken? But I knew he was right. Something happened to me in his office. I went home with a Bible. I had no intentions of reading it because I had dropped out of high school. I didn't care about education at the time, but I read it. And after reading it, man, and it just opened my eyes. You know, I left the lifestyle that was destructive, but it was a lot of money involved. I walked away from something that wasn't easy to walk away from. And it was then that I felt so free. I felt so free. I felt this joy, this peace that came upon my life. I didn't have to look over my shoulder and worry about police or people wanting to shoot me or take me out because of where I stood or what I was doing. And I felt the freedom that I had not ever experienced. And I began to heal. I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt like God was restoring my life. And is where I found purpose. You know, I found purpose in my faith, just serving others. I didn't do youth ministry, but somebody told me from the very beginning when I came to Christ that one day I would be doing youth ministry. And I was like, really? I was like, I don't know. But you know what? They were right, because years later I became a youth pastor. I've done a lot of youth work in the church and outside in the community.
It's funny how God speaks to other people about your life. This is what you're going to do. I see it. And you're like, man, come on, stop that.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Lots of good questions, man. I love it. Pedro, this is from Shannon Nelson. Do you think remorse can be taught, being that remorse often impacts parole, etc.?
Yeah, I think so. That's something we talk about. We talk about in life skills. We talk about that when we discuss faith-based topics, you know, like forgiveness and all that. And, you know, like, is there brokenness? Do you really regret? Like, are you mad because you got caught, or do you really feel broken over the decision you made and realize how you impact not just your life, your mother and father who are hurting at home that you're here, your community?
For sure.
Like, you know, we've actually taught. When I worked at a juvenile facility, I actually had to facilitate training with the kids from time to time that was called the Impact of Crime, IOC. It's a training that we take when you work at these facilities. It's called IOC, Impact of Crime, and it shows all the statistics of how crime impacts the city and people are, you know, involved in that community. And so when we talk a little bit about that, I always share, like, you know, you're not just hurting you, you know. I always put them on the spot too, like, man, you know, I did a lot of bad things to people. And when I became an adult and changed my life, some of those bad things happened to me and I didn't like it. I said, how you gonna feel when somebody steals your car? How you gonna feel when people do this or that to you? You ain't gonna like it, you know. So I learned the hard way, and I try to tell them, like, you know, you need to really truly hate, you know, if you don't hate what you did, you're bound to go back to do it again, you know.
Yep, I agree with you 100%. You know, I took a lot of different classes while I was in prison, as far as like just stuff the prison offered or made me go to or whatever. And I already had remorse, but you could watch the stuff sink in on a lot of those guys. A lot of the stuff that was being taught, you could watch it sink in, and over the course of the class, see them become remorseful where they were not before.
Yeah.
So I think it is definitely something that can be taught. It's more of a, and I hate the mindset. I hate mindset. Like, it's all about the mindset, but it's like just kind of reframing the way they think and showing them things that they may not have thought about before because they never had any reason to.
Yeah,
for sure. Yep.
Yeah. I've actually seen guys, you know, sitting in the front row of us, you know, doing our talk, and kids just break down. You know, I actually asked the kid one time afterwards. I pulled him to the side because most of the time these kids won't shed tears in front of other peers because they'll be made fun of. So I pulled one kid to the side and say, "Hey, what's going on? You know, you all right?" And he's like, "Man, I took somebody's life. After I finished here, I got to go do more time in adult prison," you know. And he was having like a moment where he felt like, man, you know, what I did was horrible, you know, and you can't undo it now, you know, and now you got to deal with even if he's had a heart change and he has remorse, you know, he still got to deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
But yeah. Somebody said, change your mindset, change your life. That's my message all the time. Romans 12:2, be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Yep.
That's one of my favorite Bible verses. I'm always talking about, if you start think different, you'll live different. That's
Hmm.
a fact.
One of the best books I've ever written. Never written a book. One of the best books I've ever read. Um, that literally changed my life while I was in prison. It's called Think Differently, Live Differently by Bob Hamp. If you don't want to read the book, there's a series on YouTube. It's a 5-part series. Definitely worth the read and worth the watch. But it was unfreaking believable. Bob Hamp, Think Differently, Live Differently. Go watch it. Go read it. I promise you will be in my DMs after you get done going, wow, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um, Sam said, what's the toughest part about what you do and how did you come to terms with it?
The toughest part about what I do is that I have to understand that I can't save. I'm not the savior. I can't
Mm-hmm.
save. I can only guide them in the right direction and be a role model. Like I say, a billboard on display. You
Mm-hmm.
know that miracles can happen. That people can change. I'm evidence of that, right?
Amen.
But at the same time, knowing that no matter what I say, what I do, I could say it till my face turns blue. Like, some kids, they're still going to go and make these choices. And
Yep.
then here's one that broke my heart last year. I was mentoring a kid. He was in the facility I worked. He was doing good, reading the Bible, acting different. I saw him changing. But the minute he went home, 30 days later, I get a call saying he was shot, gunned down in Orlando, Florida.
Mm,
He was back in with the wrong people doing the wrong thing. And somebody came and, killed him at 16 years old.
mm,
And I'm like, oh man, so that's the toughest part, that you really love on these kids, and you would hope that every kid would get it, but sometimes they end up still, in adult prison. Many times, we go to several facilities, right? And I see kids in like a level 6 program, which is a non-secure, 6 month to 9 month program. And then months later, a year later, I'm at this other facility, and I see that same kid at a now level 8 or level 10 facility, which means that now these facilities look like adult prisons. They have barbed wire. They're doing a year to 2 years now. Now their sentencing is higher. And
mm-hmm.
it just prepares them to be inside this adult prison one day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what are you doing here? I thought you went home and you should have been, yeah, well, I violated probation and I went back and did the same thing. And I'm like, oh.
Mm,
So, just going through that and saying, man, some kids, like, when I ask them, how many programs this is my 4th program. I'm like, man, do you realize that they don't have to give you a 2nd or 3rd program? They can send you to an adult prison, but you're getting so many chances and you keep ruining every chance they give you.
mm-hmm.
So eventually that judge one day says, hey, you know what? We've given you many chances. Now we're just going to go ahead and hit you with 20, in an adult prison. And this is, lives ruined, just lives ruined. So
Mm-hmm.
much potential, dreams and goals, it's locked in a cell.
Mm. That does have to be tough. Doing prison ministry in adult prison, you don't always see guys get out. I've seen, I've had the opportunity to see several guys get out. Some
Mhm.
did real good, some didn't. I can imagine with a kid though, it hits harder because they're so young and have so much potential, so much of their life ahead of them. Um, I can imagine that weighs on that. If it was not your calling and if it wasn't for the grace of God, it probably still does weigh on you, but you couldn't keep going if it wasn't for the grace of God,
Yeah, that's right.
for sure.
Absolutely not. So yeah, I have to come with it to the terms that I leave it in God's hands. I always say we plant seeds, we may come back and water them, but only God
Mm-hmm.
can save these children. You know.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Man, we are almost at time. Next week, Crystal Brown joins me. Crystal has she's got an amazing story. I've been connected with her for forever, and um, just recently, uh, 2 weeks ago, got on a Zoom call with her a week before last, or a week ago. I don't remember. Anyway, um, she's got an amazing story of addiction, living with someone with addiction, coming out of it, being an addiction counselor. Now she's working with kids. She told me, and I don't remember. I'm terrible about remembering things. Anyway, she's doing all kinds of cool stuff. She's going to be our guest, be my guest next week. After that, I'm wide open. I got to find some more guests. Um,
That's a good problem. I hear
yeah,
that.
it is a good problem. It is. Um, I should have asked you beforehand. Do you have a website?
Yes, I do. It's www.uyjinc.org. uyjinc.org.
Cool. I just put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Um, Pedro, this is awesome, man. I love what you're doing. I love your heart for kids. Hey, Jacob Roy, good to see you, man. Um, love what you're doing with the kids. And like I said, man, I know it has to be a calling because kids can be knuckleheads. But just hearing what you said about, you can count on one hand the rejection just goes to show you that, they might be knuckleheads, but they're also hungry for more.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
They're hungry for that love because they're not getting it.
Yeah, once they get that, it's a game changer. I've seen.
Yeah.
Sometimes I hate when I see kids being labeled. Like they'll bring us to a certain section of the program or the detention center. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
these are our worst kids, and then I find that these kids are not the worst kids. They just act out because they're the ones that are broken. They're the ones that are hurting the most.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that
For
need that
sure.
love, and they're getting treated a certain way, and or they're used to people when they act out give up on them. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, we have to remember to show that same grace and be patient with them. And it's not easy, but I've seen kids when they're shown love and they're given the attention they need and they see that you care. Man, I've seen kids there was one kid that at a facility cursed at me. I used to work there. He cursed at me, and I had never had that happen before. And then months later, working with him, we became really close, and he apologized to me and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that he really wasn't this hard shell that they put, this facade. Underneath that, they're really just looking for attention. They're hurting.
Mm-hmm.
They've been neglected by the people they love, so they don't trust it. Their guard is up. So you
Yep.
have to show them that you're trustworthy, that you really care about them, that you're not just going there to check off a box
Come
or
on.
for a paycheck, but you really care about these people
Mm-hmm.
changing and walking this journey with them.
Yep. I agree. It all goes back. It all goes back to the hurt. Like you don't just start doing stupid stuff. Um,
Hmm.
Most of the time you don't. Especially with those kids, man. Like it all goes back to something happened in their life that uh, hurt them. There was some trauma there somehow or another, and all they want is love. All they need is somebody to believe in them. So that's awesome that you do that. I got one last question from Shannon. What are your thoughts on sentencing guidelines that judges have discretion on for minors?
um what was that? What was the question? What are your thoughts on sentencing guidelines that judges have discretion on for minors? Hmm. Thoughts on sentencing guidelines? Well, I had that one experience that I was at a court. I was at a trial, asked to testify for one of my youth, and there was between youth sanctions and adult sanctions. Um, and he got sentenced to adult prison instead of sending him to a youth program. Even though he showed remorse in the courtroom, he wrote a letter. He broke down crying, and he really genuinely was sincere about his feeling, guilt about his decision. It's sad to see the judge still chose to send them away for 10 years. I don't,
Mm.
you know, it's hard I have a problem with seeing young kids be sentenced to adult sentence. I just,
Mhm.
the brain is still developing. These kids, they got the odds stacked against them. I think a lot of that stuff needs to be taken into consideration.
Mhm.
I don't think it should be a one size fits all, you
I
know,
agree.
case by case scenario. You know, I mean, some kids that are 17 and a half turning 18, and they may get charged as adult for something serious, maybe, a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid, who made a couple of bad choices, he was influenced or he didn't, have a father around to really guide him. I don't know. It's just, I think those guidelines need to be, yeah, considerate to that.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And not just go based off what they see on paper.
Right.
Because as a counselor at a facility, I used to see what's called face sheets. And these face sheets, before the kid was in my presence and I was doing intakes, I would see all the criminal charges. And sometimes I'm like, I don't even want to look at this because I don't want this piece of paper to cause me to think I know who the heck is walking in my office.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I stopped looking at that. I would just look at the name. And when the kid got in front of me, I was like, tell me a little bit about yourself, And then later when I did the paperwork, I would be like, wow, okay, you've gotten into some trouble here. But this piece of paper doesn't describe who you are.
Come on.
I'm hearing somebody else. I'm seeing somebody else in the office right now.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say, we can't just go. And I was a part of that, where when I turned my life around and wanted to work legal jobs, and the employer would look at my criminal record, and all I had was like 2 charges, and it wasn't even that serious, but I was being denied employment. Yeah,
man, I agree. Like, I don't remember what it is for women, but guys' brains don't really, especially the decision making part doesn't really start maturing until they're like 24, 25.
Yeah.
And that's facts. Like that's not, some wives' tale. Like that's science. So how are you going to hold a 14-year-old kid all the way responsible for doing some dumb stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's more to the story.
Yep.
Let's give them a chance.
A lot of times, another thing they didn't even take into consideration is that some of these kids have mental health situations that they haven't even been diagnosed yet, and or their family doesn't have the financial means or the health insurance to even find out what's going on with the child, and there's a stigma on that as well, so that kid could be making a lot of decisions that they're not even aware, the seriousness of it, like I have kids in my car sometimes. I work with kids on probation, with some of the employers that I've worked for, and I get to talk to kids that are 14 and 15. And sometimes I realize, like, man, this kid really doesn't understand
right.
like what they're doing. They really don't. They do not. Their mindset, when I compare a 14-year-old with like a 16, 17-year-old that I work with, the brain function is totally different, So a lot of that has to be taken into consideration, you know.
For sure. Well, Pedro, we're at time, man. Thank you so much for coming on, man. Like I enjoyed this. I know we talked a few weeks ago and I heard some of this. It was good to hear some of it again and then hear the rest of the stuff that I didn't know. So thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Chris, and the opportunity.
Yeah, man. You bet. Y'all, thank you so much for coming and joining us. I say it every week. I couldn't do it without you, and I appreciate all the support. I do not take it for granted, and just really it makes me feel good inside. Like it really warms my heart to see the support from all different walks of life coming together and just realizing that we messed up, but that's not who we are, and just kind of normalizing the fact that felons walk among us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So thank y'all very much, and we will see y'all next week.